building self-esteem in our children and how critical that is for their emotional and psychological well-being, to the point where, as we discussed in terms of general development, that the master key that we want to impart to our children is the ability to be able to achieve self-mastery. When it comes to their emotional and psychological well-being, one of the absolute keys, a master key, if you will, for that is being able to instill and to grow their own self-esteem. And we're going to talk about it, though, today in the context of learning how to praise and reward our children, and conversely, reprimanding and punishing children. And talking about how both of these, both praising and reprimanding children, in the way in which we go about it, can be critical to building their long-term and their overall self-esteem, or, God forbid, the opposite. And so we're going to take, again, as we do always, take the theory of it, talk a little bit about the theory, and then also some practical applications for each one of these. So it's popular to believe that praise and reward is beneficial for kids, and punishment and or reprimand can be harmful. In this lesson, we're going to talk about, we're going to learn that our children's self-worth is impacted not so much by whether we reprimand or praise, but rather how it's done. And that's going to be the entirety of the lesson, is about not whether, but how we go about praising and reprimanding, rewarding and punishment, which would go to, we're going to use the terms praising and reprimanding, because rewarding and punishing are additional tools that we want to reinforce what we're praising for or reprimanding for. We're going to speak specifically, though, about praise and reprimand primarily. So, Sammy, he was being a pest in school, if you will, and the teacher sent for his mother. Mrs. Cohen, his mother, she listened patiently, and the teacher began to explain, and she itemized all of the things that Sammy was getting wrong over and over and over again, and how he would disturb, and he would disturb, and he would interrupt, and then he would start throwing things. And basically, the boy was he was disturbing the class in an unbelievable way. And finally, the teacher says to the mother, well, are you going to help us? Are you going to punish this child or what? And Mrs. Cohen, she nods and she says, yes, but, we have to take into account that he's very delicate, and he's young, and he's growing, and we don't want to in any way give him some kind of Freudian complex. And so what we really want to do is we don't want to actually punish him, but we really want to frighten him. And so she says, so what do you suggest? And she says, well, Mrs. Cohen goes on, she says, well, the next time Sammy misbehaves, what I want you to do is I want you to walk up to the kid right in front of him in the class and slap him across the face. And then he'll get really scared. So the idea is that it's not whether, it's how. And for this particular mother, it was all the wrong way. But let's talk about some of the right ways to praise and to reprimand. So let's go to text 1 on page 134, and we'll start from here. Anybody want to go ahead, Janine? You're all ready to go. She's chomping at the bit.
I'm good. Since the 1969 publication of The Psychology of Self-Esteem, in which Nathaniel Branden
Opine.
Thank you, that self-esteem was the single most important facet of a person, the belief that one must do whatever he can to achieve positive self-esteem has become a movement with broad societal effects. Anything potentially damaging to kid self-esteem was axed. Competitions were frowned upon. Soccer coaches stopped counting goals and handed out trophies to everyone. teachers threw out their red pencils. Criticism was replaced with ubiquitous, even undeserved praise.
Anybody have any examples of this? Anyone familiar with any examples of this? Huh?
Oh, yeah.
Like what? Any examples?
Well, so in soccer, right, so Noah's in soccer club, and there was a tournament in Racine last fall. Everybody got a trophy and the same size trophy. And it didn't matter which team won how many times, or how many goals they shot at all.
Okay. Okay. So, the question here for discussion on page 134 is, do you agree that ample praise and reward foster healthy self-esteem, while frequent criticism inhibits self-esteem? Do you agree with that statement? Frequent praise builds self-esteem, and frequent criticism breaks self-esteem. Do we agree with this, or do we disagree? And let's hear some thoughts. Jonathan, I know that you have a lot to say on this one. I'm kidding. Go ahead. Anybody want to share with us? Go ahead, Stuart.
Well, I think if praise is warranted and there's a frequency that parallels that, then the amount that the praise is fine. And likewise, if there's some negativity that has to be brought up and it's frequent,
So be it.
so be it. Right. Long as it's relative to either it's praiseworthy or scorn-worthy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as long as we're honest about our praise and
Yeah.
our criticism or
Yeah.
critique or whatever reprimand, then that's good. Just be honest, be straight. If the kid is deserving of praise, praise him. If they're deserving of reprimand, do so, and that's it. Good. Go ahead. Just 1 second,
I just think
Marnie.
So I can tell you from in the classroom, we've been learning.
The classroom is a whole different environment
Right,
than
but
at home.
I do it
Go
at
ahead.
home
Go ahead.
also.
I'm kidding.
Like I do it at home. Like I think I do it more so in the classroom than at home. But what I try to bring in is it's not just good job, way to go. You know, it's telling them what they did that was like, wow. You know, it was really hard to put your feet away. That was really strong work. Way to go. And the phrases that you choose, and one that we've been doing a lot more at home is called like strong work, hard work, good work instead of good or oh what a beautiful picture. It's like I really like the way that you got that nose kind of so that they can understand that you're really getting into what they're doing. And then as far as negative, we've been trying a lot more. That didn't work. What could we do next time? What could you do next time? Instead of just finding, oh that didn't work. Too bad. It's very
Good.
much learn from it. Okay, continue on. What can we do another time?
Very good. Very good. Go ahead, Trudy.
well, I was very similar. I was just gonna say that I think it's how you praise and reward, and it's really similar to what she said, and it's how you criticize. I think frequent criticism, the word frequent is a problem for any kid, anybody, but it also depends on how you're criticized and what you're learning.
What if
from
the kid
it. So,
deserves frequent criticism?
I think
Problem.
I think those are unique situations, different than the average parenting, and I think if you have a child who deserves frequent criticism, there's probably more we need to look at with that child than to just constantly give that child criticism.
Okay. Good.
Becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay, good.
I'm not so certain that praise and what we use in the word punishment or
Reprimand.
reprimand is necessarily on equal footing. But I could see reprimand being a little bit more transparent and.
What do you mean by transparent?
Well, I've heard words like say the way it is or be honest, but praise to me is a little bit. You use things that are subjective qualities in a kid, like their artistic abilities or their abilities in sports. Maybe not in a team sense, but individualistic. I think you do have to. Other people said it. There's a way in which you got to do it, but I think they are disproportionate to each other.
In what way? You should have more praise or more critique?
It's not more. It's different. Critique is a little more. I don't know how to put it. Critique is.
Amy, do you know what he's talking about?
I have no idea.
I do, I think I do.
It's okay. He can speak for himself. Don't worry.
He'll find
his way there.
He'll find it. He'll find his way.
I'm enjoying it though.
This is a clinic here in parenting.
All right, I'll shut up.
No, it's fine. I just want anybody. One second, I want to hear from somebody else. Yes. One second. Does anybody else want to share over here with us before we go back on the second time around? Rhonda.
When reprimanding, trying to use as little no as possible.
Don't use no. Okay, we spoke about that a couple classes ago, but okay, good. When reprimanding, don't use no. Frida?
I think if you're gonna criticize, it has to be in a constructive way.
Constructive criticism rather than just plain criticism. Good. Anybody else? Anyone else want to share? Janine? I'm going to come
And
around
I
now.
have so much experience. I have all of one child, so you know.
Listen, I want to tell you
It's
something.
only
After,
eight, so I really have
by the way, once you have one, once you've learned on one, then the rest is all gravy. It's all gravy
So I'm
afterwards.
just, you know,
Beg to
what,
differ.
what I'm finding works is to
You haven't had
give,
enough yet.
Enough.
I would say proportionately more praise than criticism.
Try to keep it proportionate. Okay, good.
Well, yeah.
In other words, with more praise.
More focus more on the positive thing that he's doing. So
Okay.
that it's better to, but to Marty's point, importance of making it specific, so he really understands what exactly he did really well there.
Right.
And on the other hand, though, when he does things that are unacceptable as far as behavior in particular, to point out that the behavior is not acceptable. Why? Sometimes, and sometimes it's just like time out.
Mhm.
And then we have to talk later when, like, we can.
When things calm down a
Or
little
we
bit.
don't have to talk and it's just like, no.
There's
And sometimes it's just no. Good.
kind of number for every, for every one bad thing you say like 4 good things.
Yeah, they have like
Something
those
that.
percentages, right?
Some-
90% to 10% is what I heard. There's no way in hell it happens.
There's
Go ahead.
the pennies in the pocket thing.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
No, that's what I was gonna say, when you were talking about weight of it, it's, we've been told that for every one negative, you need to find 10 positive, and it can be
Wow,
anything.
it is.
And like the way you walk in the house,
Mhm.
you know, anything.
Anything. Okay. Yes, Stuart.
I think that if you're talking about a child does something and you have to admonish him, I think that you're dealing with behavior. It's a behavior situation. And I was just addressing maybe what you're talking about. It's sort of a behavioral thing. But when you're praising it, it's based on, it should be on some sort of achievement. In other words, when I was a kid, I played trombone, and I was something of a trombone savant. You know, I just could play. Well, my parents, I wouldn't expect them to all day long say, I mean, I was good, but there was a level, that's where I was. If I had made some achievement, something above, if I, you know, to praise your kid for having socks that match, I mean, you know, it's just not, after
some-
a while,
for some
you
it's a
could
big
say,
deal.
I love your socks.
For some, it's a big deal.
Yeah, well, it works now in our house, but once they're out in the world where people aren't going to be praising their socks, that's what I'm
So
trying.
that's what you mean by the honesty part. It can't just be.
It's got to be based on some sort of
something.
achievement, on their own achievement. Where the other's behavioral, and it's pretty much cut and dry. This is, you know, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. Anybody want to weigh in before we move on? Okay, we're going to move on. So, we're going to have, hopefully, tonight we'll come out with a nuanced understanding of what we call healthy praise and healthy reprimand or critique. More reprimand than critique, and I want to give you some tools to walk away from that you can actually, a criteria by which you can start to judge what is sort of has long-term educational benefits versus maybe not. So, as we discussed in last week's lesson, that nurturing our children's self-worth is absolutely fundamental. Out of an abundance of concern for our children's well-being, we as a society, it seems, have gone overboard and gone to the other extreme, and we're very, very comfortable in praising our children constantly sometimes, over, all the time. Like you said, the socks are correct, you walked in the door, whatever. But we've been told, it's been drilled into us, be careful how much you criticize your children, because if you do, remember, you have to praise them 10 times as much. And not only that, you're going to, if you criticize them or you reprimand them, you never know, you're going to end up on the psychiatrist's couch, and who knows what you're going to do to their self-esteem, and they're going to be completely broken up. So simply put, a lot of us try to avoid punishing or reprimanding our children with the best of intentions. In today's class, we're going to learn that praise and reward, while they're important and even vital for our children's development and their self-esteem, but not all forms of positive feedback are helpful. In fact, positive feedback can, in some cases, we'll see, actually be harmful to our children's general development, as well as to their long-term self-esteem. Listen closely, because this is not usually spoken about. But there are certain kinds of positive feedback and praise and everything that can actually be detrimental to their development in certain ways. And the same is true regarding reprimand and discipline. Same thing is true. When administered correctly, they are absolutely necessary components in educating our children, and they can and should be constructive, not only for the development, but even for the development of their self-esteem. Reprimanding a child can be healthy for the development of self-esteem. So that's what I started to say tonight, that it's not a question of whether to praise or conversely to reprimand, but rather what we're going to talk about is how to go about it, how to do it. Our child's self-worth and self-image is not so much defined by whether we do it, but by how we do it. If done correctly, they are both the positive and the negative, the positive feedback, the praise, as well as the negative feedback, the reprimand. Both of them are absolutely, they can both be beneficial, and if done incorrectly, both of them can be harmful. Okay? Now, yes, Rhonda.
I just want to give a public service announcement. When you stated before, like, practicing this, unless I'm misinterpreting, you're keeping your child off the couch, the psychiatrist's couch, or whatever.
It's okay to go to a psychiatrist if you need to.
Yes, I just want to say, in this
Thank you.
day and age, mental health is as important as physical health, so.
That's why we're here at this class. This is a much cheaper form of therapy than going to the couch each. I'm kidding, Rhonda. You are correct. I'm laughing, but I'm not. When somebody needs a mental health professional, they absolutely should and can, and hopefully there's no stigma involved anymore, and there shouldn't be. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. So let's talk about how to phrase the praise. Okay? How to phrase the praise. That's our next section here. Okay? So let's start with exploring what is the appropriate way and a proper way to go about praising our children. Okay? So I want to start with an exercise on page 135, learning exercise 1A. And we're going to get back to this. I want you to fill this out, and we'll get back to it a little later in the lesson. So write down 2 positive things that your child recently did and how you responded to them. Okay? 2 positive things that they did and how you responded. By the way, it doesn't matter what age your children are. I see you're laughing over there. It's okay. It doesn't matter. Okay, let's move on to page 136, and I want to take a look at four examples of complimenting a child. 4 examples, and I want you to decide, are these positive, negative, or neutral? Okay? So, you're so smart. I'm very proud of you. Positive, negative, or neutral? It's not a trick question. You're an absolute angel, the best. Positive, negative, or neutral?
Negative.
Negative. Okay. You did a great job. Look at how perfect the work is, this work is.
Positive.
Positive, negative, neutral. Positive. You worked really hard, that's wonderful. You said negative on number 3?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not, you guys just mark it down for yourselves. You mark this down for yourselves. I'm not yet, we'll get back to all of this. All of your answers we'll get back to. Mark it for yourself. You worked really hard, that's wonderful. Positive, negative, or neutral.
I don't know, everybody said negative.
It's okay, let people say, you do what you think. You can do it.
For me, yes.
You did wonderful work there.
You're smart.
Okay,
Thank you, Mommy.
so what's the proper way to praise? Are there any guidelines that can help us to do it in an effective and helpful way? And let's take a look at an amazing study. This is taken from the same article as text number 1, which is, by the way, a fascinating article in and of itself. Text number 2, page 137. Can I have a reader, please? Somebody put this down.
Sure. For a few decades, it's been noted that a large percentage of all gifted students, those who score in the top 10% on aptitude tests, severely underestimate their own abilities. When parents praise their children's intelligence, they believe they are providing the solution to this problem. According to a survey conducted by Columbia University, 85% of American parents think it's important to tell their kids that they are smart. But a growing body of research and a new study from the trenches of the New York public school system strongly suggests it might be the other way around. Giving kids the label of smart does not prevent them from underperforming. It might actually be causing it. For the past 10 years, psychologist Carol Dweck and her team at Columbia, she's now at Stanford, studied the effect of praise on students in a dozen New York schools. Her seminal work, a series of experiments on 400 fifth graders, paints the picture most clearly. Dweck sent 4 female research assistants into New York fifth grade classrooms. The researchers would take a single child out of the classroom for a nonverbal IQ test consisting of a series of puzzles easy enough that all the children would do fairly well. Some of the children were praised for their intelligence. They were told, "You must be smart at this." Other students were praised for their effort. "You must have worked really hard." Then the students were given a choice of test for the second round. One choice was a test that would be more difficult than the first, but the researchers told the kids that they learn a lot from attempting the puzzles. The other choice, Dweck's team explained, was an easy test, just like the first. Of those praised for their effort, 90% chose the harder set of puzzles. Of those praised for their intelligence, the majority chose the easy test. The smart kids took the cup out.
Is this surprising to anybody? No. Why is it not surprising? What is it? So let's first make sure we understand what happened. So they all took this relatively easy test. Some of the kids were told, "Oh, you did so great. You're so smart." The other half of the kids were told, "Ah, you did so great. You worked so hard. I'm proud of you, how hard you worked." The group that said you're so smart, they were now given an opportunity. Okay, we're going to take another test. You have a choice now. You want to take the hard test? You want to take the easy test? You take the hard test. It's going to be hard, but you're going to learn a lot with it. Or you can take the easy test. So the majority of the ones who were told you're really smart, they said, "We'll take the easy one." The majority of those, actually 90%, 90% who were told you worked so hard, you had such a great effort in the first test, 90% chose to take the harder test. Okay? So it's about 2 or 3 times as many. It's not a negligible number. It's a huge difference between those who were praised for their effort versus those who were praised for their talent, for their smarts. Okay? So some of you are not at all shocked by this study. This was a groundbreaking study. At the time it was counterintuitive because, and the reason it's counterintuitive is because it's counterintuitive maybe to a lot of our response, what we do with our children. We want our children to think and to believe in themselves and to have self-esteem and to know that they can do it. So we tell them, "You're smart. You can do it. You have all the ability. You are so talented. You're so bright. And look how creative you are. And you're so good at it." Right? That's what we tell our kids constantly. And please, don't tell me you don't tell this to your kids. We all tell this to our kids, hopefully. We do. again, unless you've really thought about this and gone through this, this is what we tell our kids. You're so smart. You're so beautiful. You're so creative. You're so good. Right? That's what we tell them all the time. And we tell it to them wanting to build their self-esteem. So why is it that this was the reaction of the kids? You started to say, Marilyn.
So if we tell a child, I think the smart one is the most graphic example, that's how they identify themselves. They don't want to disappoint. They don't want to fail. So we actually set them up to protect themselves by not putting themselves out there and taking risks, and therefore potentially failing and disappointing us.
So, okay, so when we tell them you're smart, they want to make sure that they live up to that. So they're going to protect their being smart, and they're not going to take any risks. In fact, not only, what else does it mean when we praise them constantly for being smart? What else does it tell them?
Well, I'm using this thing for this exercise. That's why I think the first three are all negative, because they're all.
We're going to get back to it.
Oh,
Listen, don't
okay,
jump the gun.
Okay, I didn't
Don't
say
jump the gun.
that. Okay, I won't. Sorry.
If you're not smart, then you're bad.
But it's all conditional. In other words, everything. Well, okay. You're praising them. You're saying this. You're the best. Everything is. They're conditioned. Our love for you is conditional. You're saying they did something really great, and then you're saying how you feel about it. Thereby, our praise for them, our love for them, is now hinged on the quality that we're giving them as a positive. So these people who are smart, it wasn't their parents now, so it probably applies to more of they didn't want to get their foundation of being smart unhinged. But I think in general.
So you're talking about the fact that if we tell them that they're smart and they see that we get excited by that, so
Yeah.
then they feel like the only reason we love them or we care about them is because they're smart.
Yeah, and that's
The conditionality.
This conditionality of our praise.
Okay, good. What else does it tell them?
Do you think it's black and white?
I don't think it's black
I
and
don't
white. We're
think
gonna
it
get into some of the nuance of it, but we're talking about now. You know, we're going to talk about the difference between what I call educational praise and sort of generic praise. And they're not made for the same time, and they're not made for the same place. A child needs to know I love you no matter what. You're smart, you're beautiful, you're great. Just the way you are, I love you. That's one form of praise. But we're talking about here educational praise. The kid comes home with a great score on a test. The kid comes home or nails, kicks the winning goal, is very successful at baseball or whatever other talent that they exhibit. What do we want to praise them for? We're not suggesting we don't praise them. That's not what happened here. The other group of kids were also praised. They were praised for something else, though. They were praised for their effort. They were praised for a completely different thing. It seems very similar. Here they were praised for their achievement. You achieved a great score. You're so smart. Here they were praised for their effort. So what does that tell the child about what interests the parent? Go ahead.
What the outcome is, not what they learned.
Okay, good. So what the kid is learning here is that what my parents really care about, what they really want, and you said it can turn into conditionality. It can also turn into I think that maybe, I didn't see it in this particular study, but I think that it correlates pretty well, that if the whole goal is to be smart, to get ahead, to win, so then it doesn't really make a difference how I get there. The process is not what's important. What's important is the outcome. It's a very short ride from there to cheating to get ahead, from doing all these other things, no matter what, as long as I get the end result. As long as I have the achievement, who cares? Yes?
Yeah, I think like you have to praise them for the working hard, for the do their best.
To doing their best. Okay, now, by the way, that doesn't mean we don't want them to stretch themselves, but this is an inverse kind of thing. It's counterintuitive. Instead of saying, so the kid, he fails. The kid loses. He's not able to achieve. The kid tries really hard, and he's not able to achieve. And any kid who tries hard and is not able to achieve, what happens? They're disappointed. They